I made a video recently about the use of radio bugs in the United States by local, state and federal law enforcement, and I thought I'd give you a bit of an insight into the UK's variants back in the 1980s and 1990s. There was an article that appeared on the front page of the Mail on Sunday on the 10th of May 1992. The article was based on the experiences of reporter Michael Robotham, who spent 4 days driving around central London with a scanning receiver in the company of a counter-surveillance expert who remained anonymous. The purpose of this exercise was to try and see if they could identify any bugs operating within detection range. Now, this may sound like searching for a needle in a haystack, but they were successful and managed to identify several devices, including one that was actually being planted. When a bug has been placed, it isn't usually worth the risk of recovering it once its original purpose has been served. Some mains-powered devices have been known to continue operating for many years. In one case, a bugging device was discovered when building work was being carried out on a private house. It transpired that the house had changed hands 4 times since the device was thought to have been originally planted. The sophistication and availability of bugging devices massively increased in the years prior, and most early devices used to be based on a free-running oscillator circuit tuned to operate somewhere in the 88 to 108 MHz VHF broadcast band. As FM radio became more popular, the operating frequencies tended to move a little bit higher up to the 108 to 118 MHz VHF aircraft navigation band. The majority of these devices were very simple and used wideband FM with an output power of around 5 to 10 milliwatts. By the mid-1980s, new designs which would have originally been produced for the professional market became more generally available. This was partially due to improved miniaturization techniques resulting from surface mount technology, and secondly the marketing of the devices, which made them appear as though they were just another high-tech consumer gadget. These more upmarket devices were crystal controlled and used narrowband FM, which had the advantage of minimizing tuning drift, which was a major problem with designs based on a free-running oscillator. Secondly, it provided a much greater operating range for the same level of transmitting power. This last factor is perhaps the most important, as the lower the power, the less likely it was that the device would be detected, and the longer the batteries would last. The most popular operating frequencies for crystal-controlled bugs were in the areas of 129.4 to 140 MHz, as well as 390 to 450 MHz, with the most common VHF devices operating on 139.0, 139.6, 139.8 and 140 MHz. Most UHF devices tended to operate around 400 MHz. A skillful implementer of a bug like this would try and mask the operation of a device by selecting an operating frequency adjacent to a strong local transmission. This was usually sufficient to confuse a simple bug detector of the type often used by security departments. One useful trick was to try searching for harmonics of bugging devices. Because of the perceived need to keep the device as small as possible, very little attention was paid to output filtering. As a consequence, third and fifth harmonic radiation could often be received over just as great a range as the intended signal, especially if the bug only used an electrically short antenna. The third harmonic of the most popular VHF bugs lay in a very quiet part of the spectrum between 417 and 420 MHz. A small directional beam antenna and a handheld receiver made detection and location relatively easy. Although less common than audio bugging, the 1990s saw an increasing trend towards remote video surveillance. Modern CCD video cameras were becoming increasingly smaller and cheaper. Maplin Electronics sold a very small camera PCB, complete with a built-in lens which was very easy to conceal. All that was required was a DC power supply, a simple 1.3 GHz FM TV transmitter which were available in kit form for amateur use, and a satellite TV tuner, and you had a complete remote surveillance system. Professional systems tended to make use of frequencies around 10 GHz, but there were plenty of 1.3 to 1.4 GHz systems in operation. In fact, several have been known to have been monitored by amateur TV enthusiasts during the 1980s and 1990s. I've not heard any stories of scanner enthusiasts actually monitoring a bugging device in the UK. Many thought they'd found one which turned out to either be a radio microphone system or Harmonics of baby alarms. Given the number of devices being sold through advertisements in papers such as Exchange and Mart or via shops in Tottenham Court Road in London during this time, it's surprising there weren't more stories about bugs being picked up. So let me know if you ever heard any.